everyone. We are so back. Oh, I'm so excited. Guys, it's been it's been a couple of months since I've been here. And I can't lie, I came here a little earlier so that I can remember what to do. Guys, it's the Lord Love Tales. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. We got a lot to cover, so I will do a couple of introductions, of course, but we've got some things to cover. I just want to, to the new people, I want to show you what this show is about. So, a little about me, the host, Trinity Gwen. I usually go by Tren. For some reason, I tell people my name, and they usually just, drop the ITY after a while. Or I think it's just because we'll, follow each other on Instagram, and it'll just say, Tren_Monet. And they'll be like, oh, hey, Tren. And then that's just how it happens. So a little bit about me. I grew up on the West Side. I'm also a musician. I play trombone. I've been playing trombone for 12 years. Hopefully, if my schedule aligns, I might be in the jazz ensemble here at DePaul. I really miss jazz. I really miss marching band. But since DePaul doesn't have a football team, it would make sense that DePaul doesn't have a marching band. So here we are. A little bit about this show's backstory. If you didn't know, probably don't. But I have been podcasting since I was 17. And for context, that was about 2020. So I was like, man, I really wanted to build, make a show. And I've loved talking and yapping because I have a tendency to yap. A good chunk of my friends know this. And a lot of people have mentioned that I have a podcast voice, or I've gotten, comments throughout my life about how, soothing my voice can be. And at one point I thought it was kind of an insult because people would say, oh, you're your voice kind of makes me want to fall asleep. And in the beginning I was like, that kind of that kind of sounds like an insult, but I get it now. Other than that, though, storytelling has just been a big thing. I mentioned that I'm a musician, but I also like to write. I also love to read. I also like learning about films and cinema and TV show, all those things, all those media engines, and anything that has a story is fair game. And that's just kind of the epitome of this show. And with that, I'll just show you, what we do here and where this show kind of centers around. So I'm going to start off with a story. So there's this guy, this is a real guy. His name is Rodney Fox. He's an Australian filmmaker and a conservationist solely focusing on great white sharks. And he was competing in a championship in 1963. A spear fisherman. Before all of this, all the accolades that I just listed, he was a spear fisherman. And he was trying to reclaim his title. But one day at that championship, a shark hits him from below and drags him underwater. And of course, Rodney's fighting back. He's trying to gouge the shark's eyes out and puts him in a bear hug. But of course, he didn't really come out. He didn't really come out with a good result because initially he got to the surface and the shark brings him back. But in the smallest second, the shark bites the fish's float and the line snaps. And Rodney is rescued by a boat. And the only way they identified him is because how much blood was in the water. Now, when I told you Rodney fought back, he tried his hardest, but this is a great white shark we're talking about. So it's, his story, he's shared his story a lot. So if you want to learn more about it, just look up Rodney Fox. And this was, I don't know how he made it. He had tendons in his hands. The tendons in his hands were severed, broken ribs, a punctured lung, chest, diaphragm, and he had to get 462 stitches. That's a lot. I don't know how he made it out of that. Those doctors were working. That's all I'll say. But while he was in the hospital for a few weeks, he also mentioned that he had 105-degree fever. I think the highest I've gotten was maybe just 100. But 105, how much 5 degrees makes a difference? We got false falls, so you know exactly what that means. But in that time, while he was in the hospital, he was thinking about how he wanted to go back to the water. He wanted to get back in the water. And for a lot of people, if they go through a traumatic experience like that, they're kind of hesitant to go back into it, especially something as near death, near fatal as this. But initially, he loved being in the water. There's a lot of people who find great experiences and great memories just being surrounded by the water. So that's completely understandable. And one day, he and his wife took their niece to the zoo, and he went to the lion's cage. Now, lions are also in that predator category. And when he was watching this lion, he realized they weren't so scary. This is something that I can observe, but it's not as daunting as just being, in the den with it, which, makes sense. So this led him to his version of the Shark Tank. And the reason why I say his version of the Shark Tank is because the world-renowned ocean cinematographer Jacques Cousteau, he had his own Shark Tank, but his invention of it was solely just for research. So it wasn't out for the public as it is with Rodney. He managed to make, I think it was like a steel cage inspired by that lion cage that he saw. And he had it open to the public so people who wanted to come see great white sharks in a protected manner, at least, to see them. So you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with anything? Well, I have to put my phone. My mom just texted me in the group chat. Ma. So anyway, Rodney, like I said, he was the first to build a shark tank to observe white sharks. And he was so intrigued to understand them and found them really beautiful, which led to a group of people reaching out. These group of people were actually working on a movie directed by this young 20-something-year-old guy named Steven Spielberg, who initially, of course, made Jaws. Now, Rodney didn't know what Jaws was at the time. He didn't know what this movie would entail. And he thought like this was going to be like a learning experience for people to understand what sharks, they're sharks, the ecosystem and everything like that. So, of course, it came out, got footage. And I think Rodney, he submitted like live footage of shark footage for the movie. But when that happened, when Jaws came out, we learned that just by Jaws alone, Jaws came out 50 years ago, this year, which is why I wanted to talk about it. Jaws was the movie that literally taught everyone to be deathly afraid of sharks. And just by that is why I want to talk about, this is why we have this conversation right now. So I have so many sites, so many resources that I will verbally cite, because if you're listening live, if you want to revert back to these resources, you can. And then there are other ways that you can get in touch with these sites, which I will tell near the end. Now, because of Jaws, it's like you can't even go into the water or can't even see a shark without hearing the Jaws theme song, like the theme, right, by John Williams. But I did a little more digging. There are so many things that can happen before you get in an encounter in a shark attack. Because as of last month, there have been 8 total confirmed shark attacks. As of last month, 8. And thanks to PETA, I looked up this article. Since it's 2025, I'm sure that's why. They said 25 things. They listed 25 things more likely to kill you than a shark attack. So, I'm going to go through them. Not all of them. Of course, I'm going to go through the 25, but you can look further and to see how many died by this specific thing. So, the first one, accidental poisoning, air travel, boating, cars. This is pretty much up there. A champagne cork, constipation, contracting an infection in the hospital, cycling, excessive cold, falling, fireworks, what else? Food poisoning, hunting, a jet ski, a lawnmower, a ladder, lightning strikes, a rip current, rock climbing, that's fair, the sun, skydiving, also fair, a tornado, a train, tanning beds, and lastly, I feel like this goes without saying, water. So all of these things, again, if you want to see who died, how many people died by each thing, just go online. PETA, 25 things more likely to kill you than a shark attack. Yeah. So I wrote in here after commercial break, but it's only been 10 minutes. So we're going to keep going until I feel comfortable giving you guys a commercial break. So we're going to keep going. Now, I do want to emphasize, granted, there's only been 8 shark attacks this year. I mean, we still got a few more months left, but I don't think it'll boost that much. I think even then, the shark attacks weren't even here in this country. I think some of them were in Australia. Now, we say there's 8 total confirmed shark attacks. You want to know how many sharks humans kill every year? 100 million. 100 million. Now, there are so many sharks, like shark species out there, because sharks are old. Their lineage goes back to about like 400 million years ago. And that's not only older than trees and mountains, that's also older than the North Star, the rings of Saturn. Like these guys are old. And there's another species called the Greenland shark. The reason why I'm laughing is because I am seeing a picture of the Greenland shark in my head. And I'm not going to lie to you. These sharks actually live to be hundreds of years old. And if you decide to look up a picture, I really believe, like, to explain it to you, a Greenland shark looks like somebody taxidermied a shark for the first time. Now, not to be bogus, because like I said, Greenland sharks, they live to be hundreds of years old. I think maybe, is it 250? Is it 300? Actually, let me look it up. Let's do some quick. The Greenland shark life expectancy, right? It is at least 272 years and potentially over 400 years, with some suggesting they can live for 500 years or more. Wow. Well, I mean, let's be real. If I was 200 years old, my skin probably wouldn't look the greatest. And they're underwater. So, I mean, let me not judge. Let me not judge for real. Maybe it was just a bad picture. Anyway, to think about it, I listened to, like I said, I love podcasting since if I was doing it in high school. There is a podcast that I listen to. I'll also cite those as well. It's called Radiolab. It's like a sub show of NPR, and Radiolab talked about, had a whole Shark Week. And the episode that I'm specifically citing was the shark inside you. So if you want to listen to that, it's a very immersive podcast. So it's not just people, having a conversation, but there's also sound effects and music and all that stuff. It's like enhanced storytelling. I just love it so much. And you'll learn more about Rodney Fox as well, because I don't want to completely, just copy and paste. That just seems a little silly. But anyway, the Greenland shark. One more thing about the Greenland shark, because you have to conceptualize this. If a Greenland shark can live at most 500 years, just like from what I remembered in Radiolab, they said there are Greenland sharks out there that have been around when Alexander Hamilton was alive, and at the point where they made a play about him, like a musical about him. In that same time, a Greenland shark has lived that entire time. It's super funny to think about. It's just been there. And as I was doing more research and more notes, because you can't, if you're listening audibly, I always have notes. I'm a very organized person that way. It's just how I roll. And I just feel like sharks are really old. But I think, I forgot how, like, the percentage of how much of the ocean that we really discovered. Was it 10? Is it 10%? I think it might have been 10%. Might even be less than that. I feel like it's 5 to 10%. However, that's not that much. The ocean is really big. So I say that because I think the megalodon is still out there. I'm not going to lie to you. Can we really say that a species that is primarily underwater, fully extinct, can we say that for sure? I don't think so. Because humans, we don't dwell on the water that much. We're not built to live underwater. So what can we really say about any species? We don't even know hardly any of the species down there, because I don't even think we have the technology ourselves to go that that deep underwater. Yeah, we might have like machines, but us personally, no one's ever lived to tell the tale. I just think that's really fascinating. But yeah, when Rodney helped with that footage and he saw what came out of it, he couldn't believe what came out of the finished result. He was embarrassed because, again, he thought this was going to be more of a learning curve and just like a way to understand how sharks and just marine biology coexisted with the rest of the world. And Jaws, when we watch it, I saw Jaws for the first time this summer, actually. Don't hate me. All the film majors, if you're listening, don't hate me. I know it's like cinema gold, but I just saw it a couple weeks ago. And I had to have a different lens, right? I am 22. I was born in 2003. This movie came out in 1975. Technology was just booming then. And I'm just as old as social media. So some of the things I've already been acclimated to. But at that time, I had to take myself out of it when I saw it for the first time in the theaters because it came back in the theaters. I'm not sure if it still is. However, I saw it, and when I saw the mechanical bull, not mechanical bull, oh my gosh, I keep doing this. The mechanical shark. Yes, it does make me think of Beyonce. So sorry. The mechanical shark. I saw it and I was like, wow. This is so unbelievable. Like, I'm sorry. Look, I get it. In 1975, it made sense. This is new. Like, we don't know. This is a mechanical shark. I almost did it again. And I just had to take myself out of it. However, I understood the significance that Jaws held because after Jaws, you know how many shark movies came out? I had to look it up. I think it was about at least over 100. And so many shark movies that came out of that have just been, I can guarantee, maybe not guarantee, but I can just assume that any person who's made a shark movie has just been like, wow, I really love Jaws and Jaws is somewhere in that conversation. And I think a lot of those movies, even before Jaws, we've seen this story time and time again, how we encounter something that just seems a little unfamiliar. And it's not agreed, it's not accepted by the society. And one person advocates for it or one person advocates against it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's a monster. Oh my gosh, we must kill it. This is exactly what happened with Jaws. So for the past 50 years, everyone has just been having this insane take about sharks when in hindsight, sharks have never really done that much damage, hence the 8 people this year, even though rest in peace to them. But I'm just saying, I just feel like sharks have just been living their lives and the way that they have been portrayed in media has just given them a bad rep when we really should be paying attention to the dolphins. You know what I mean? It's switched. Anyway, I want to talk about the soundtrack as well. So this show will not only just talk about movies and TV shows, it will also talk about books. I didn't get too much into books last quarter because this show was just starting last quarter. Now we've got a whole year. You got me for a year till I graduate. And I'm not going to play, actually will play the Jaws theme, but after the break. But I just wanted to also add that. We're talking about every kind of media engine. Just letting you know. Everything is fair game. But again, this story has been told multiple times. We've seen that with Frankenstein, which is why I'm one of those people. Call me pretentious if you want, but if you ever tell me, hey, I'm going to dress up as Frankenstein, I always tell them, no, you're going to dress up as Frankenstein's monster. There's a difference because we've had this conversation before. We paint this picture of who the monster really is, but at the end of the day, we turn around, the monster is usually us. You know what I mean? It's usually the people who portray that hate, that anger, that disgust towards something that was just living its life and just was kind of confused. Shall we go to break? Yeah, let's go to break. I will be right back, guys. It's about 2 minutes of ads. So if you want, stick around and then come right back. All right, welcome back. You're listening to Radio Paul, Chicago's College Connection. This is the Laura Love Tales with your host, Trinity Gwen. And we've been talking about sharks and the cultivation theory, which I'll talk about later, and how weird it is how people have made just a big thing about sharks when in hindsight, they're just trying to live their life. You know what I mean? So I pulled up. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've been here, so you gotta be patient with me. I want to let you guys listen to the Jaws theme song. You know, I feel like you don't have to hear it, but just as a refresher, and it's super good. And gives me, it gives me a opportunity. It gives me an excuse to force you guys to listen to John Williams. Okay, so I'm gonna press this here, see if I can do it. That was the Jaws theme song. Now, I want to tell you something. If you guys heard the da-da-da, you want to know something? That's a tuba. I thought, it's so crazy. Now, if you're not a musician, if you're not a band kid, it's perfectly fine. I'll explain it. That is a big ask of a tuba player. That's extremely high. You would probably thought, wow, I thought that was a French horn. No, it's a tuba. And it's very impressive. Now, you don't have to read sheet music to understand what I'm about to say, but if you've ever seen sheet music, you'll know that there are lines, lines in the notes. You'll notice, if it's in the middle of the staff, it's in the middle repertoire, it's in the middle. But if you start seeing notes below the staff, you'll understand, okay, this is a pretty low note. And if you see notes above the staff when they're creating extra lines, okay, this is pretty high. The low notes are usually the middle ground for a lot of tuba players. As someone who is in the low brass section myself, I understand this. Pedal notes are super fun to play. But that was, I felt like that's something that I needed to share. A tuba playing that high is that's like if you ask Mariah Carey, she's known to play sing whistle tones and stuff like that. If you ask her to sing in a baritone part, could you imagine? Could you imagine Mariah Carey singing songs from Oklahoma? Oh, what a beautiful morning. That'd be so interesting to me. But yeah, there's this podcast, another podcast that I listen to called The Real Score, REEL Score. And they mentioned, I think my sister just texted me. They mention and they talk about how I do make myself laugh. Thanks, Candace. Anyway, so The Real Score is a podcast that talks about, movie soundtracks. There's so many movie soundtrack podcasts out there, and I'll definitely talk about them more, and we'll maybe have our own episode about that. However, this specific episode I wanted to tell you. Now, if you know on the Jaws theme, it just goes E, F, E, F, right? I'm going to go on my tuner app. And yes, it is programmed to a bass trombone sound. So let me put it up to the mic. I hope you can hear it. Right? It's EF. But it made me think when I was listening to this specific episode in The Real Score, we were talking about the Batman theme, the Michael Giacchino Batman that came out a couple years ago. And I love that soundtrack. That score is so good. Now, what I want to say, how these, why did you even bring up Batman? Because if you've ever seen Jaws, you realize you don't even see the shark till about an hour into the movie. The movie is 2 hours long. So we don't see the shark until maybe the middle of the movie. But what we do understand is that when we hear if we hear that theme, we know that the shark is around. We don't have to see it, but that music just personifies the shark's character. Now, why I talk about Batman, Michael Giacchino's, Robert Pattinson's Batman. And when we see the beginning of the movie, his theme is playing. So I think it's B flat. Yeah, it is. So I hope you can hear that. B flat, B flat, B flat, G flat, right? And we hear that. And it doesn't, Robert Pattinson doesn't even show up till like a couple of minutes, and we understand just by that theme alone. But when Batman's in the shadows, we know that Batman is there, and that music throughout the entirety of the movie. If Batman isn't in the frame, the music plays, and we're like, okay, Batman's about to show up, or he's here. His essence is here, and that's such a beautiful and really cool similarity that I wanted to share. And another thing, I talk about this all the time. So if you don't know this, it's if you do know this from the multiple times I explain it, it's fine, because I talked about how cool it is that classical music just has inspired all of us. Now the Michael Giacchino, I know that you're 100% aware of Michael Giacchino and his work, because he's known for, yes, the Batman score, but he's also known for the music that he worked on, because he worked on the music for the Incredibles. Like he's done that music, and it's classic, never fails. And I want to show you now. I showed you the Batman theme, right? But if you change the key, so if I play it like, it's a different key, it sounds like everyone talks about how the Batman theme in the Robert Pattinson one favors the Imperial March. Is it A? Yeah, it's A flat. And it just sounds similar. I could talk about stuff like that all the time. But anyway, I hope that makes sense. Anyway, the anticipation of Jaws' entrance is like a technique that was really used, and people use that, and just because of Jaws. Another technique that people have also used that I've talked about in the very first episode, like last quarter, when I'm in this studio, I was doing radio now. I talked about Severance, right? If you've seen Severance, such a good show. It's a very cool psychological thriller. They're not coming out with season 3 stuff yet, so this gives you time to catch up. The technique, the severed technique, when Mark is, in the elevator and he's starting to get severed, that sequence, the producer, who is Ben Stiller produces the show, and Dan Erickson, who is the creator of the show, they use the same dolly zoom, or the vertigo effect that was used in Jaws. The scene where Chief Brody is out on the beach and Jaws is striking again, and they have this weird zoom thing. The dolly zoom is like it tracks your movement, but also zooming in on your face at the same time. It's a really cool effect, and that same thing has been used in Severance because of Jaws. I calculated this perfectly, guys. You just don't know. Anyway, I also want to bring up the Western genre. It's such a weird trend, but stay with me, walk with me. There's this video that I watched called How to See. Like, I think the series is called How to See Westerns. Is the genre dead? It's a YouTube video published by the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, and the commenter talks about if the Western genre, how much it changed cinema. And if a Western movie were made today, would it fly the same way as it did? And I have to say, the Western genre was beloved by the baby boomer generation and a bit of the generation before, but I think its biggest audience was baby boomers. I can recall a time, I think my great-grandfather wasn't part of the baby boomer generation, but he loved Clint Eastwood. I can recall a vivid imagery of him just watching and I think at that point, kids who were baby boomers, they were raised by the silent generation. That's a statement in of itself. But those values and those themes of self-heroism and knowing that you're a flawed person, but you find yourself mixed in with a so-called perfect system and can point those things out, but not also being accepted by the society, is just one of those pivotal things, those main storylines and plot lines that possessed a lot of the Western movies. And the commenter mentioned that, around 1960s, late 60s was where Western genre just kind of halted and stopped because a lot of the revolution, the 60s, man, a lot of things changed. And once the Western genre just kind of was at a close, he mentioned that movies just started becoming other movies. And it's a really nice commentary. The commenter has a really nice, grounding voice. He talks about how, directors like Spielberg and like Lucas pulled their inspiration from Western movies. And some of the shots used in Star Wars kind of favor or exactly favor some Western movies that we have. He actually has like a, side by side. And it's really cool. But when you think about it, all of these techniques and influences come from this, like they came from Steven Spielberg, came from Western movies. They all, for some reason, they kind of just all come back to the Western genre. And I think it's a really cool concept. How I talked about the cultivation theory. Now, hate to brag. No, I don't. There was a paper that I wrote I think it was my first quarter here in my intro to mass communication class. We had to write. Oh, I love that class. It was so fun. We talked about, of course, multiple media engines. Side note, I think I might actually pick up a minor. Not to add more work. I'm just saying, I'm looking at my degree report often, and I'm like, there's got to be a minor in here that I've taken at least 90% of these classes. Saying 90 because I might have to take one more class in the classes that I'm taking, and it might be a part of that minor. So I'm going to look. But I think the minor that I might choose, if it's doable for me, is communication and media. That just kind of makes sense for me. Oh, when people ask me, what's your degree? Oh, I'm majoring in public relations and advertising with a minor in communication and media. Yeah, that makes sense. That's so trend coded. Right. Anyway, the assignment that we had, there's so many different theories in communications and mass communication. I chose the cultivation theory. And the cultivation theory demonstrates how the media we indulge ourselves with can shape the attitudes and the way that we present ourselves, how we move across the world. And media specifically shows itself, like I mentioned before, a movie becomes other movies. And the themes and the plots they all kind of find themselves the same somehow. They might have the same approach, but the principle may be still there. And this just kind of advances the narrative. If something is displayed multiple times, then it must be justified. And I wrote this paper, which I aced, by the way. I wrote it about, the cultivation theory, and the assignment was to find a source of media, but I think it was more so a TV show or a program that, there were guidelines to it. The program had to still be running, or at least like a year old or something like that. There was guidelines to it. However, I wrote about the show You with Penn Badgley, and I talked about how scary it is that we've seen so many sources of media when it comes to relationships. If you've watched You, you'll understand that Joe, one, is an unreliable narrator, I can't stand that trope anymore. I was all for it the first 3 seasons. The 4th one, I was like, okay, this kind of took a turn. The 5th one, I started watching the first episode, and I was like, so out of all of these years that I've been seeing this show, he hasn't changed. Unreliable narrator. Can't do it. However, I wrote in the paper that Joe has this constant need to be loved, and he'll be, he has this drive of whatever stands in the way of who he truly thinks is the love of his life. He will get there, even if it involves killing somebody. But to the wrong individual, to a group of people, they'll view that as an endearing trait. Like, oh, he's willing to do anything for love. He'll always get, at the end of the day, he'll always find love. No, this is a very unhealthy pattern. And if we see this multiple times, there are some people who feel this way. This is why we have so many toxic relationships now, because the amount of media that we indulge ourselves with changes the way that we should view each other. And it's not healthy in no sense of the word. So I say all this is because it's because of the constant message that sharks are quote unquote monsters, that we have completely given sharks a bad rep, when in reality, sharks don't even favor us that much. I mentioned before, sharks are 400 million years old. And when I told you about Rodney Fox, and he invented that shark cage, that was in 1963. We didn't have that much technology. It hasn't been that long. And for sharks to be around for so long, they kind of see us as like this weird thing. Like if we ever go diving, sharks are more curious about us than we are of them. Because if they don't, and they see, it's just like, if they come up to you, they're like, I don't know what you are. They're in the water all the time. We're barely in I don't know what the statistics are about it, an average person always being in the water, but I know it's not 100%. So when a shark sees us, it's like, I don't know what to make of you. I might bite you. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do here. Am I afraid? Like, it's not really, it's always a weird thing. And I don't know how often sharks encounter humans that much in their entire life, like in their entire lifetime, especially for where they are, where they migrate, where they breed, all that stuff. Turtles is a different story, I think, because turtles, we conserve them in their breeding grounds because they do come to the beaches and lay their eggs, and a lot of people do their life's work protecting them. So it's different for sharks, and I think I wanted to raise awareness of that. I think the zoologist that wanted to come out of this just wanted to say that. What else? Okay, wait a minute. I think that's all. I went pretty well. This was great. I thought I wouldn't have enough time. I did say I had a whole bunch of content, and it is in here, and we went through it all. So I guess that's it. I guess I'll leave you guys early. Well, we had like 20 extra minutes. However, I will talk about what we'll talk about next week because I already have that set up. So I mentioned how music, is going to be one of those things in this show. I am going to talk about how music just is another act of storytelling, but the techniques that are used in it, the way that we just kind of have these signifiers and specific tones and specific, chords and everything, like chord progressions and stuff like that, we understand what this means. What does this mean for us? What is the signal? All those things. And I'm going to use different songs. I'm going to use different notes, and it's going to be a whole thing. I wasn't able to be a full band kid last quarter, but now I can. I'm super excited. I leave every episode, or at least try to. I try to leave every episode with a fun fact. So today's fun fact is that the mechanical shark, like I mentioned, used in Jaws is named after Bruce Raymer, which is Steven Spielberg's lawyer, which I thought was funny. And yes, if you're wondering, Bruce, the great white shark from Finding Nemo, was named after Bruce, the mechanical shark in Jaws. So yes, seems like all roads lead back to Jaws. So, for the closing remarks, because we got a lot to cover since I've changed some stuff, that's the end of today's show. If you listen live every Tuesday, we'll be back here next Tuesday from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. CST. If you are a visual watcher, if you enjoy watching YouTube podcast videos, I upload those every Sunday. I think I said Sunday, either Sunday or Friday. One of them. I put them up every week. If you want to see some other content that I do, because it's not just my podcast, I have tons of other videos of me yapping about whatever I want to yap about. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is It's Only Tren. It's like all one word, all lowercase. It's Only Tren, Tren. I do that all the time when people's like, "What's your name?" And I say Trinity. I literally see every time I tell them my name, I see them start typing and use the I. And when I say Trenity, they start backspacing. It never fails. So there's that. That's my YouTube channel if you want to tune in visually. If you couldn't catch all of today's set, if you came in late, have no fear. You could listen to the Laura Love Tales wherever you find your podcasts. Episodes will be posted early Wednesday mornings for my fellow commuters out there. Just something for you to have to listen to. And to be involved in the updated on polls. I didn't even show you guys the poll. Whoops. Because I was so excited. I'll go over that real quick. We still got time. I asked people what were their favorite movie genres. And a lot of people said horror. Like, a lot of people said horror. Thriller, drama, regular people taking down CEOs and corporations. But yeah, there's a lot of people that said horror. You guys must really like La La Land. Anyway, to be involved and updated on polls and just like things that I continue to yap about, follow my Instagram at trend, TREN _ MONAE. It's like Monet, like Claude Monet, but not that spelling. I know that was kind of confusing, but it's the pronunciation is Monet, but it's MONAE. Trend _ Yeah. That's it. I will see you guys next week. This has been fun. Let me know what you guys think, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys.